Welcome to Yellow Circle Basic Cloud Components. In this video we're going to create a data center, basic components of a data center in about 6 minutes. So as you can see, I just logged in with my credentials and I am looking at the dashboard or the overview of the dashboard. There is nothing in this tenant space at this point. So the first thing we're going to do is create our router. So click on the Routers tab on the left and then click on Create Router. Give your router a name. In this case, we're just going to call it Router Edge. And click Create. As you can see, the router is created, and you can always look at it by clicking on Network Topology, and it kind of gives you a visual look at what your tenant space looks like. As you can see, there's a public network in blue and your router, which is not connected. So what we're going to do right now is actually connect that router to the external network by clicking on Set Gateway and then selecting the external cloud network. And now going back to network topology, you can see that your router is now connected to the external physical network. Now it's time to create a private network. So first thing we do is we give our private network a name. In this case, we just call it Network DMZ. Click Next, and this is where we set the subnet. We'll give it a name, give it a private IP address range, and then we click Next. On that screen is where we enable or disable DHCP, so that our guest machines don't have to hardcode the IPs. There will be a DHCP server running in your tenant space that can provide those IPs to those machines. And in this case, we are using Google's public DNS servers as the DNS names. You can see that your private network is now created. Going back to the network topology screen, you can see the orange line is your private network, but it's not connected to your router at this point. So what are we going to do now is actually make that connection by going into our router and creating an interface. So in this case, we're creating an interface that is connected to Network DMZ, and click Add Interface. It takes a few seconds for system to build your connection between the private network and the router. And going back to the network topology screen, you can see that we have successfully made that connection now. We are pretty much ready to start launching our virtual machines now. That will be connected to this private network, connected to the router, and should have access to the internet. So going back to the Compute tab and going over to the pre-existing images, you can see there's a huge list of images that is already built for you. We're going to launch a Ceros test Linux image in this case. Just give it a name. We're just going to call it test instance. You have other choices like how many you want, what flavor. And the most important tab is that you connect it to your private network. Do not try to connect your virtual machine to the external network. So click Launch. Your screen gonna switch back to your instances dashboard, and you can see your machine is now going through a build process. It's gonna go through build, spawning. So right now the virtual machine is getting deployed to one of the compute nodes. Depending on the image you choose, this can take few seconds to a few minutes. So in our case, it should be fairly fast because Ceros Linux is very, very small. As you can see, our machine is already active. Now we can actually access the console screen of this virtual machine directly from the dashboard by clicking on More and then clicking on Console. There's been some cases where the mouse and keyboard doesn't work, so I recommend that you make it full screen. That way your keyboard and mouse will be working inside your console screen. As you can see, I am logging in as the user ID and password that is already provided. The first thing we're going to do is run ipconfig to make sure that this virtual machine already received an IP address from the DHCP server that we set up earlier. As you can see, this received a 201 IP address. The next thing is we're going to make sure it is already talking to the internet. We just send a ping command to Google, and as you can see, we are receiving replies. So in less than 6 minutes, you have created a virtual machine in a blank virtual data center. From creating routers to private networks, setting up DHCP, and it's all there. And you can always review your dashboard by clicking on the overview screen, and you can see that your machine is now connected by going to the network topology screen, and it'll show your virtual machine, your private network, your router, and the public cloud network. Well, have fun.